What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to the Nerd Castle for the next episode in our Q&A, where you and I hang out for a little while and talk about the questions that you have submitted from last week's episode. So if you wanted to leave me a question for next week, make sure you leave it down below. Ask again if you asked a question that you wanted me to answer. So let's get started. There's lots of things to work on here today. We've only got so much time, so let's get bouncing. Jared Jackson has our first question of the day, kicking it off, and he says, what do you think about ESPN2's coverage of MOBAs, and do you think competitive gaming, or do you think of competitive gaming as a sport, or is it something all on its own? You know, that's kind of an interesting question, and every time I get a question about that, I'm a little bit terrified that I'm just gonna, like, make everybody on the internet mad at me. Because it's a tough call. I mean, technically a sport is classified as anything that takes like a high level of skill and practice. And so if you take it by that definition, sure. When I was a kid, a sport, though, was something that took like physical exertion. And so to people like of my generation who play sports and stuff like that, we're still kind of accepting that like golf is a sport. We're like, you don't sweat much though. I mean, there's not a lot of exertion. I mean, yeah, it's skillful and you have to practice a lot. So I think it might be a generational thing. Like the longer time goes along, it seems like more and more things get accepted as sports, quote unquote. And so honestly, I try to stay out of that murky water. But as to ESPN's coverage, they're going to cover anything that gets money. And I think that it's undeniable at this point that esports as an entire genre are pretty much cash cows as far as like Twitch TV and a number of other venues are concerned. You're starting to see huge payouts for the people winning. I think you're kind of going through a renaissance right now, as there was with like World Star Poker and things of that nature. I'm sorry, the World Series of Poker and all that kind of stuff. There was a brief period where like blackjack and poker got super popular and were on TV all over the place. And I think it's that same sort of feeding frenzy that you're finding on the front end of any medium that's breaking out right now as a moneymaker. And so anyways, as far as what I think about it, hey, more power to them. I don't really like MOBAs, I don't like MOBAs, I don't really watch them, I don't really contribute or like care about them, but if other people want to, that's totally cool. Not really an interesting thing for me, but to each his own. Enilo asks, do you still smoke weed? No, not anymore. When I first started the channel, I used to smoke a lot, like I'd say probably 80% of the time back when I first started. I was probably at least baked or coming down from being baked, but anymore I don't smoke that much. Kind of like after I got out of college, there's like a time and a place for everything, and that place is college, is what South Park said. And then once I started kind of like paying, I guess once I started working full-time on the channel and trying to make sure that I was like getting stuff done, and this was actually the way that I was earning my living, I wanted to be a little bit more careful and a little bit less cavalier about it, I guess. I think that when I first started, like, it was just like a hobby thing that I did on the side, so I didn't really care if I, like, dressed nice or slurred my words or was kind of, like, baked half the time. And now that it's my job and I do it 40 hours, 60 hours a week in between there, I feel like I should probably give it, like, the due diligence that it deserves and kind of just keep myself nice and unintoxicated. I like to have fun every now and again on the stream and get drunk, but aside from that, I don't really smoke that much anymore. I don't think I've probably smoked in about a year. It's been a while, and that's not because I think there's anything wrong with it. Like, I totally would if I had extra time to do so. It's just that for right now, I require my faculties to be, like, together. But honestly, I find that weed for me is, like, it's a really, really good thing for when I hit, like, writer's block, or if I'm having a musician's issue where I can't figure out what I want to do with a certain progression or something. Smoke a little bit of weed, feel a little bit better. And it's weird how it makes you think outside the box and kind of approach a problem. I used to do that all the time with my calculus and some of my upper, like, linear algebra and some of my math classes. I'd bang my head against a problem for, like, a week, and then I'd get baked one night, and I'd all of a sudden think of the solution and be like, ugh, because it was just a way to think about the problem that I hadn't thought about before. It's a weird, weird plant, and it does weird, weird things, but it did help me out a lot. But no, I don't smoke anymore, to answer your question. I think we kind of started beating around the bush here. Nope, I don't smoke anymore. No. Crash Chaser asks, how do you feel about the people that always have to type first in the comment sections? Because I sure know how I feel about them. Honestly, it's a fad that I don't really understand, but it's so universal. Like, every single video you go up on YouTube to has somebody that goes first. Every single one, and it's not a thing that I understand. It's not a thing that I've thought about it a lot, too. I don't know what people get out of typing first on every single video, but if that's how they want to pass their time, I think that I'm kind of in a grace. It's kind of almost like fog, as far if I had a feeling that was the weather as to that particular phenomena, I would say that it would be fog. I'm just kind of like, it's kind of like a gray area where it doesn't, like, irritate me, but I don't really feel anything strongly about it either way. People want to do it, that's all on them. That's cool. I'm not going to, like, delete their comments or anything like that. I don't think it, like, contributes anything to the channel or really adds to... Well, I guess it's kind of the sign that you've made it, though, that somebody's always, like, first on all of your videos. because that didn't used to happen. So I guess it means that my channel's gotten larger now that I have people that always are like, first on every single video. It doesn't bother me at all, though. Just an extra comment makes my SEO go better. Ben Osick asks, what do you consider to be the best series you have ever made on YouTube, and why? That's a tough question. You know, I'm a big fan of a lot of my older series. I'm of the opinion that the channel has sort of jumped the shark at this point, and every day I wake up just kind of wondering how I'm going to keep this going any further, and what I could possibly say that's going to be original or unique from any of the bits or routines or jokes that I've ever done, and somehow I magically find my way into some new routine or some new shtick for every single series. I'd say my favorite or the best series I ever did, Dying Light, was really good. That was the series where I managed to keep the tempo up. It was popular, people liked it, and at the same time I enjoyed it, and I was able to kind of make jokes the entire time, and I don't feel like it ever fell off a cliff and got boring. I liked Dying Light. I've done so many series at this point, though, that it's hard to say. I like Shadowrun Returns, because that was my first reintroduction to the universe of Shadowrun, and so I liked that one as well. I had a lot of fun with it. I also very much liked The Long Dark the first time I played it through. I liked that game a ton, and it still remains one of my favorite indie games of all time, probably one of the better indie games ever made. But aside from those three, I have trouble thinking. I think a lot of my earlier stuff had a lot more heart. Like nowadays, I think that I yuck it up a lot. I'm like, yeah, just trying to ham it up all the time. And I think that back when I first started and I didn't care because I didn't need to care about it, I feel like a lot of my series went better back then because I just didn't give a shit because it wasn't my job, and I was like, eh, and I could try to kind of like half-ass it whenever I wanted, and I thought that situations kind of came around that were a lot more funny back then. Obviously, people are free to disagree, but I think that most of my best series are behind me at this point. I have trouble thinking about it a lot of the time, like what I'm gonna do anymore. A lot of my series nowadays, I just don't feel good about them. I just don't feel confident about them like I used to, whereas back maybe a year, 2 years ago, when the channel was little and only had like 2,000 subscribers, I felt super confident about what I was doing. I was like, yeah, man, that series was fantastic. It was a blast. It was great. And nowadays, I'm just like, this sucks, hate this sucks. I don't know. I don't know if it's a change in my mindset or what it is. I have no idea. But I think, like, I really liked a lot of my older series, but if I had to pin the tail on the donkey here, I'd probably say Dying Light was my favorite. That or Shadowrun Returns. Those two were a lot of fun. Weirdly enough, I really liked Alien Isolation. That game was really, really cool, and it was always unfortunate that I never felt like I gave that game its due diligence because we had a bunch of technical issues. Like, the first couple episodes got wiped out by a YouTube bug, and then I had to re-upload them, and it kind of just set the series off. It's kind of like, you remember in... what's the name of that? K-17? Was that the name? K-19? K-17? I don't know. The Widowmaker in the movie where they throw the wine bottle and it hits the front of the ship and it bounces off, it doesn't break, and everybody just gets hella quiet. That's how I feel about Alien Isolation. Like, I love the game, and we hit that series which, like, with such a high amount of just enjoyment and fervor, and then YouTube wiped out the front end of the series, and it was just, from there on it was hard to recover, but I really loved the game. It was a really good game. I hope they make more of them. Maybe not in the Alien universe, because it'd be hard to do what they've already done over again. I don't see that game ever having a sequel, because it'd be very, very difficult to duplicate what that game was after and do it a second time without people getting bored. That was very much a game that you play one time, and then you're, like, done with it, and you never play it again. One-trick pony in that regard, but a very, very good one-trick pony. Briar Innes asks, and I apologize if I've messed up anybody's name here today. I say that every time. As somebody who wants to move to the Bay Area, what part in your experience would be best on a financial level, and what is a lively area to move to? In all honesty, you can't go wrong with... it depends what you want to do, because the closer to the middle of the Bay you get, the more Bay Area heart and soul it has. So as you get out towards, like, Hayward, Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco, as you get into that area, it becomes a little bit more skeevy and divey, but at the same time, I think the level of, like, soul and interesting stuff goes up. But at the same time, some of those areas can get incredibly sketchy. I'd say probably Petaluma. I mean, if you're trying to get out there, I would recommend you not move here. You just visit, in all honesty, because the Bay Area is an area that is very, very difficult to start a life here. I saw your profile picture, and so I'm assuming you're a young dude, or you're trying to get started in life, and it's hard out here because this is one of the highest housing markets in the United States. It's kind of like moving to New York City, or moving to Portland, or moving to Los Angeles, or moving to any big city center. The rents are insanely high here. Like, you'll pay $1,000 a month just to live in the hood, you know? Just to live in a really divey area with no air conditioning, no heater, no security, no police. And that's where, when I was younger, you could get an apartment in a divey area for $350 a month. When I first graduated from high school, that's what my rent was with my first roommate. We lived in the hood, and it was like $400 a month. It was super cheap. It was divey. The door wouldn't close properly. Like, the windows had, like, bar things over them. But at the same time, we were young. We were working minimum wage jobs, 40 hours a week. Just trying to get things done and playing World of Warcraft all day, every day, me and my roommate. And so it worked out for us, but the housing market is so high right now. If you want to get an apartment in any sort of safe area, it's probably about $1,200 to $1,300 a month. And that's for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, studio-type apartment. It's rowdy, and so it's difficult unless you've got a really, really good job lined up that can afford the rent out here. It's kind of a place that you go to just circle the drain, and you never quite go anywhere. Like, you spend all your time hustling, but you don't really, like, accomplish anything because all of your money goes to bills and paying the ridiculous rent. It's tough. I've always told people, you know you live in the Bay Area when you have 5 roommates and you still can't pay your rent. So anyways, I'd say Petaluma. You can get some okay rent out there. Probably be like $1,100, $1,150 maybe for a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe, if you could find like a good area. I think when I was living out in Santa Rosa, you could get in for like $950, $1,000, but that was probably 5-6 years ago. So you could probably get out that way. I'd probably say start in Petaluma and then work you could probably get decent rent out in Fairfield, which isn't really like the Bay Area, but it's kind of on the edge of the Bay Area. You might be able to get good rent in Vallejo. I mean, you can get good rent in Oakland and stuff like that, but you're gonna be in a sketchy neighborhood. So anyways, that would be my advice for that one. It's a tough area to live in just based on how the housing market is so high. It's hard to accomplish anything, so be careful. If you move out here, be careful. You may never leave. And I don't mean that in like a fatalistic way either. You're not gonna die. I mean that you're just gonna spend all your money on rent, and so it's gonna keep you from ever kind of moving up in life. Junior Batista, Junior Batista. Hey, Splat. I just wanted to ask you if you tried YouTube Gaming. If so, which one do you prefer, YouTube Gaming or Twitch? Will you be switching over from Twitch to YouTube Gaming? No, I won't. YouTube Gaming is just another debacle that YouTube is trying to dethrone Twitch as the #1 streaming website, and it's not going to work for a couple of reasons. A, YouTube still has their absolutely ludicrous copyright problems. Until they solve that, they will never be a competitor for Twitch. 100% they will never be able to do it, because right now you've got issues where people are up on Twitch and they're getting booted mid-stream because Content ID detects stupid shit that is in the game. They'll be like, oh, this song belongs to this person, you can't stream anymore. Shut down. And you gotta restart your stream, and it's just... YouTube is only focused on making as much money as possible and covering their ass as much as possible legally, and they're paranoid, and that paranoia leads to a service that's inferior. Like, yes, YouTube streaming does look good, and it does run well, and I like the way the dashboard looks, and I like the way the whole thing functions, but it's still got all of those same bleed-over problems that YouTube itself has, and I think that's really going to hamper them from ever having any real success in the streaming market. I just don't... There's also no incentive for people to switch over. YouTube Gaming basically gives you the exact same cut that Twitch does, and so for people that are established on Twitch, there's no reason to cross over, and everyone who's established on YouTube is already established on Twitch, and so I think they're going to have big problems doing that unless they outright just bribe people to come over by giving them 100% cuts and things like that. So that's really my thoughts about that. I have trouble thinking of ways that YouTube, aside from bribing people on Twitch to come over to YouTube, aside from using their greater cash flow, that's the only way that I could see YouTube Gaming is going to win versus Twitch. Aeris asks, are you religious? No, I'm not. I grew up in a very religious family, and people ask me this question a lot, so I get the feeling that religion is a big deal to a lot of people. I'm not religious. I have trouble I think I answered this actually in one of my first Q&As, but I'll do it again because it's a question that comes up so frequently, so I figure I'll hit it every now and again and just kind of like stake my flag in the ground. I don't know if I'm an atheist or an agnostic. I'm somewhere in between, but I was raised super religiously, like really, really, really devout upbringing. And there's nothing that kills religion faster than a devout upbringing. I'll tell you that right now. Everybody I know that was raised in a super strict, very, very religious household is no longer religious, because I think it just burns you out on religion. Like going to church like 8 hours, 9 hours a week and just kind of being forcefully there over and over and over again. I don't know. You just start disassembling the whole thing and you kind of just destroy it in your own head, and then from there you can never quite recover. I don't know if that threw me into atheist territory or into agnostic territory. I don't really care because it's not a thing that I think about. It doesn't even register as something important to me. So I think a lot of people give up on religion and then become devout atheists, and then they spend all their time preaching atheism just in the same way that they preached for religion, or the way that people around them preach for religion. For me, it's just not even like an issue, and so I don't think about it, I don't talk about it, and I don't really consider it ever. I've just kind of packed my bags with the whole thing and moved forward. I don't care what anybody believes, that's on them. Just like I don't care that people care what I believe. They're like, yeah, whatever, you know, I don't think about it, so that's kind of where I stand right now. Vince White asks, hey Splat, what recording software, he capitalized Splat. Hey Splat, what recording software and audio software do you use? Because I want to start a YouTube channel. I use a lot of different stuff, but when I first started, I used Fraps, and I used Audacity to record my microphone. I still use Audacity. It's on the screen underneath the camera right now. Audacity is a recording program. It's open source. It's a fantastic program. It's absolutely amazing. In fact, I think that Audacity records vocals, ooh, I don't know if I want to go out on this limb or not, as well as something like Pro Tools does, which is a very expensive suite of recording software. Like, Audacity is a really solid program, especially if you mod the hell out of it. It's really, really good. And so you use that to capture your mic, and then from there, I just use Fraps when I started out. Nowadays, I use everything. I use Fraps, OBS, Bandicam, and DxStory, depending on what is least finicky with the game that I'm currently playing, because every game and every engine has its own little foibles and things that it doesn't like. So some games hate Fraps, some games hate Bandicam, some games really hate DxStory, some games do not like OBS, and so I keep a bunch of different recording softwares that I jump in between to make sure that I can get what I need done. And then on top of that, I also use Sony Vegas in order to, I actually just bought Vegas 13 last week, which was a major expenditure for the channel, but it was time that I updated, and what a stupidly expensive program. But anyways, I use Vegas to render and edit everything because I'm comfortable with it, and I could use Premiere, but I just don't feel like switching over. Connor Swale says, I want to hear about your metal music career, so my question is, what's your favorite band, and what's the best thing about doing metal? Well, I don't really like to talk about it that much, because it's a part of my life that I've closed the chapter on. I was a really, really bad person back then, and there's a lot of bad memories, and a lot of bad blood, and a lot of kind of bad miasma around the whole thing. And so I try not to talk about it too much, but people seem to be really, really interested in it. So, my favorite band of all time is either Darkmoor, which I think is Spain's greatest contribution to the earth. I know I'm being facetious, but Darkmoor is like, do you like Rush? If you like Rush and you like Blind Guardian, Darkmoor is a cross between Blind Guardian and Rush, and for some reason it just gets under your skin, and you can't stop listening to it once you start. It's the best. It is just the nerdiest, geekiest power metal about wizards and magic and Raceland. It's not a band you admit to listening to because it's so goofy and just, like, lame, but at the same time, they're so goddamn awesome that I'll admit to it here. Like, I really do like them, and then Blind Guardian would probably be my all-time pick. I very much like Blind Guardian, and then after that, I'd probably say Sonata Arctica, Darkmoor. I like Hammerfall, but they're kind of off and on. Corpus Kalani's good, although they were towards the end of my metal career. Amon Amarth's okay, although I've moved away from a lot of the screaming stuff nowadays. I'm really into kind of power metal and things that are a little bit more prog-ish. And then the best thing about doing metal was groupies and alcoholism. That's pretty much, you can drink liquor all day long and just be the worst person that you could ever the worst thing that you could ever fantasize being, you could be that, and it just makes you cooler in the metal world because they're all into Satan and like, metal! You could just be the shittiest human being on earth and nobody gets on your case about it. They're like, ah, well, it's heavy metal. Like, Dave Mustaine has been the shittiest human being on earth for like 25 years, and yet because Megadeth rocks ass, nobody gives him shit about it. It is what it is. It's part of the music. VG asks, hey Splat, how are you today, sir? I'm doing pretty well. It's one of those weird days where it's kind of a 5 out of 10. I've had worse days and I've had better days. And I suppose that the banality of the day is sort of what distinguishes it. And I suppose, you know, an average day is better than a shitty day. So I'll take that. I asked you a question some months ago. You answered it that you may start a series. So I'm going to ask you again, are you ever going to do a series on Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition? That's a tough one. My experience with RPGs thus far, and you can see it in Shadowrun Hong Kong right now, is that RPGs are a difficult genre to play because most people are not going to watch them. They watch the first 1 or 2 episodes, and then after that, they go, I want to go buy this game. And so they do, and they don't want to spoil the storyline because RPGs are all about storyline. And so, because of that, you'll see like a big spike. It's a tough series to get into. Baldur's Gate is one of my favorite games of all time, but that's a tough one. I doubt it. That's a really, really tough one to get behind because it would probably take a good 60 episodes, 80 episodes. And then on top of that, I can't guarantee anybody would watch it. And so, it's a hard one. Tony Much asks, is there a game that ever made you cry throughout the playthrough of the entire game? Also, hey buddy, how's it going? You know, I was raised in a very stoic family where nobody ever cried. The only emotion my family really had was sort of happiness and anger. And so I don't really cry at much, in all honesty. I never have been that guy. And it's not because it's something I'm ashamed of or because I think there's something wrong with crying. Although I will admit that when people cry around me, it makes me feel really, really awkward. And I'm just like, stop that. Excuse yourself. Excuse yourself until you have regained your composure, and then we shall talk. I don't know. I don't deal with it very well. I don't cry much, though. It's not a thing that I do, because my family is very, very stone-faced. And so honestly, I can't really think of a game that made me... The beginning of Ori was a bummer. That was a big bummer when his mom dies. Like in the first 4 minutes of the game, you're just like, wow. I was trying to be funny about that game, and they sucked all the oxygen out of the room in the first episode. The first episode, I always try to make it my funniest, and after that intro, I was just like, where do we go from here? I want to make jokes right now, but his mom just died, and so I feel like it's in poor taste. But I'd say Ori was pretty sad. I was also pretty bummed out when Aeris died in Final Fantasy VII. I was little when I played that, though. I was probably 13 or 14 when I played that game. But no, not really. Not really, but hello. Proud Goose asks, Splatter, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why? Flight and levitation. I just fly up into the clouds and float for a while. Sometimes I wish I could just be away from everything. Because even if I go outside my house, I'm still in the middle of the city, and there's people walking around and like arguing on street corners, and it's just noisy. And sometimes I wish that when I'm in a bad mood, I could just lay on my back like you do when you float in the swimming pool, and just like float up into the sky like above a cloud and just like hang there for a while and just hope that a plane didn't hit me. It'd be pretty awesome. That's probably what I would go with. I enjoy doing that in the pool. I go down to the bottom and I let all the air out of my lungs and I just lay at the bottom of the pool. I do it all the time. Since I was a little kid, that's the most peaceful feeling on earth, is just going down to the bottom of the pool, exhaling all the air you have, and just like floating at the bottom of the pool, just like laying there on the bottom. I don't know why that makes me so happy and so calm, but it does, and I bet I could feel the same thing up in the sky. Papa Nesto asks, hey, Splattercat, hello again. My question is, in the Star Wars universe, which side do you like more? Jedi, Sith, Rebels, or Empire? So I'm going to take this about 30 years past the events of A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to take this into the future, and what happens in Star Wars, probably what you're going to see in the new films, I hope anyways, is in the future what ends up happening is the Empire, it gets taken over by the Sith. There's a civil war where the human half of the Empire fights with the Sith half of the Empire. The Jedi are destroyed. Again, they spend a lot of time getting destroyed. Luke Skywalker remakes the Jedi. They get blown up again. That's around the time that the Yuuzhan Vong invade as well. But anyways, aside from that, I like when the Empire splits in half, the human half of the Empire that sort of embraces Jedi ideology, but at the same time they have the Imperial Knights with the silver lightsabers. I think that when the Empire splits in half and they get rid of the Sith ideology, you get a much more human, much more rational Empire that is still... There's still an emperor, there's still a king. It's not necessarily totalitarian, but at the same time you get a more human-friendly version of the Empire that cares about its citizens and does its best to protect its territory and makes sure nothing bad happens to its citizens. I like the Empire once they split off from the Sith, because they're not as idealistic and naive as the Rebels, but at the same time, they have an ability to govern, but they still kind of have like an iron fist when they need to. I like the reformed Empire that comes kind of 30 years after Luke Skywalker remakes the Jedi Temple and all that. I like them. I forget the name of the Emperor. It's around the time when Darth Krayt, I think, is ruling the Sith half of the Empire. And then I forget the name of the Emperor who runs the human half of the Empire. I can't remember. I don't know if he's... They're Jedi, too. Like, they have guys who train with the Jedi and stuff like that on their side. And so they're kind of like a kinder, gentler, less evil, more human version of the Empire, and I like that. Wrath Kim asks, hey, Splattercat, I was wondering if you ever had a thought about writing your own book. If so, what would it be like? I was actually working on a trash fantasy novel for about a year. Like, just, you know, one of those page-turner, Forgotten Realms type novels. I worked on that for a while. I've written 8 or 9 short stories that were in Warhammer 40k, but I don't know what happened to them. I wrote them when I was in college before I started YouTubing, and I've had so many computers and so many laptops and so many flash drives. Not really sure what happened to them. I had a couple that were written from the perspective of an Imperial Guard troop that I really, really enjoyed writing. It took me about 2-3 months to write maybe 20 pages and just edit the hell out of it till it was very smooth, and I liked the way that it progressed. I like the storyline, but there's not a whole lot of things that I've written that I've been proud of so far. The few that I did for the Imperial Guard I liked. There were 2 or 3 of them, and then I have about 400 pages written of a trash fantasy novel in a universe that I started working with a while back. I got really, really into it for a while, and I've got like 3 big journals just full of probably 200-page journals. I got 2 or 3 of those that are just full of maps and kind of like political stuff and intrigue and who runs what and what's where, down to even like individual cities, like who runs things here and what is the overall cultural tempo. I worked on it for a long time, and then I burned out on it, and I just couldn't go back to it because now I would have to read all the journals all over again because I don't remember half of what I wrote just to get started. And it was you know, I started writing the book, and I think I got like 35, 45 pages in, and then I just kind of couldn't decide what I wanted to do with it, because there's all these, you know, the hero's journey, and there's so many random tropes, and you find yourself falling down wormholes doing things that have already been done, and so you try to rewrite that and do it a little bit differently, and then you try to change the way things work out, and it's just very, very difficult to do anything original in the fantasy genre anymore without becoming too over the line and weird and sort of theoretical. And I think I fell off the horse with it, but yeah, I've thought about it for a while, and I've always liked writing. I used to be an English major before I went into IT, and then I kind of fell off, before I went into computer science. And so I was an English major, then I was a computer science major, then I was a geology major, and those were my 3 major loves in college. Anyways, yeah, I thought about it for a while. Techno Cheez-It asks, hey, Matt, have you ever thought about making a tabletop RPG series on the channel? Yeah, but there's actually technical limitations there. It'd be very, very difficult. So I have friends that are as funny as I think my content is. Like, they're people that I actually think they're funnier than me. They're able to tell jokes better than I am, and they're fun guys to hang out with. But the problem is you would need professional cameras. You would need people running the cameras and able to switch in between the cameras to make it work properly. And the problem is the technical and financial limitations that would go into making something like that. I wouldn't be able to get it up to my standards. I would want it to look super clean like the show that Will Wheaton does, and that just takes a lot of money and a lot of professional people working on it. And unfortunately, my cash flow is not there. I think doing something realistic like running something on Twitch over Skype using one of the tabletop programs would be doable, but I wouldn't want to do it like that. I would want to have like cameras and all kinds of cool stuff going in. I want it to be very sleek and sort of news-like and professional, and I don't think we can make it work. Mike Forager asks, are you ever going to eat that munch pack? Yeah, I catch shit about that at my house all the time from my girlfriend, too. They sent it over, and I just never got around to doing it. You know how you buy a part for your car, like a headlight that's a different color, and it just sits in your living room, and you never get around to installing it, but you bought it, so obviously you wanted to, and it's sitting there, and you just never do it because it doesn't cross your mind? Welcome to my Munch Pack universe. So check out Munch Pack. They're right here. They sent me this box. They send you snacks from all over the world, and then you eat them. And it's kind of like Loot Crate, but with snack foods. And so I at least owe them a shout out, I guess, since I never did the video. And so there it is. Eventually, I assume that I'll open it up and eat it. Essential Sentinel asks, this is going to be our last question of the day. Question, if you could change a major point or event in a video game of your choice, what would you change and in what universe? Final Fantasy VII. I would change that Aeris dies. I would change that because I'd like to see the way that it turns out if Aeris had not died. Now, in the storyline, Aeris is the only bit of color in an otherwise gray and sort of dim world of Midgar. Like, you're in there, everything is machinery, everything is concrete, everything is smoke, everything is gray or copper or bronze. There's very little humanity in that city. Shinra has drained it all out in their pursuit for, you know, claiming the life stream and drawing out materia and things like that. And Aeris is the colorful character there. She's the girl in a world of concrete and slag selling flowers. And so to me, she always represented innocence in that environment. Whenever you have a story writer, for example, you see it in Blade Runner, there's a lack of animals in that show. Everything is mechanical, everything is concrete, there's no animals, there's no innocence, there's no niceness. They do that on purpose to show how far humanity has fallen and how things have changed. It's the same thing in Final Fantasy VII, and Aeris is that character that shows you that there's a little bit of life left in the universe. There's a little bit of hope. There's a little bit of naivete. And the quest was personal for the team before. They're dedicated to stopping Shinra, and they're dedicated to stopping Sephiroth, but it got personal for Cloud as the main character when Aeris dies. Up until that point, he was sort of just going along with the whole Avalanche plan of stopping bad things from happening, and also sort of catching up with Sephiroth and figuring out what's going on. When Aeris dies, it becomes very personal, and some of the naivete of the quest, you're very much the good guy up until that point, and then the whole thing becomes stained by revenge and sort of darker human emotions. And I'd be interested in seeing what happens if Aeris hadn't died. How would later things in the storyline have turned out? Because things become very, very dark after she dies. The storyline takes a turn. It starts out grim, almost grimdark in the beginning, but she's always that happy person. She and Tifa and some of the other people in the group, very much the happy people in the group that keep things going. And after she dies, you see a lot of the soul get sucked out of the group, and it becomes very sort of dark and vengeful and hateful, and that's why we have to stop them now, is because it's personal. And that's not to say it wasn't personal before, because every character in Final Fantasy VII has their own motivations. But after Aeris dies, definitely for me, it became personal for me as a player. I was like, no, you killed the most innocent member of the group. That's not okay, aside from maybe like Kate Sith or somebody like that, some of the more jovial R2-D2-like characters. But I would like to see how it would have happened if the group had maintained that little bit of happiness and joviality and that little lighthearted nature that Aeris and some of the other comedic characters brought along before she died. Very interested in seeing how that would have played out differently, and so that would be the way that I'm sure there's been fan fictions written about it or something like that, but I would like to see Squaresoft's ruling on it. Maybe pre-Enix, though. I kind of feel like something got ruined when Square mixed with Enix. Square and Enix were good on their own, and then when they crossed, everything just went bad, and so I don't know. I'd like to see how it would have turned out differently. That's going to be it for our Q&A today. Thank you for joining me here at the Nerd Castle for the next episode, number 8, if I'm remembering my numbers properly. Thank you for stopping by. Please leave me more questions down below for next week. I noticed the questions have been dithering a little bit, and so the pool has gotten smaller for me to select from. I like having a big pool. I like space, expanse. I like it. So anyways, leave your questions down below, even if it's something that you've already suggested in previous weeks. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page. I redid all of the rewards for people that contribute to the channel. I never shout this out in any of my other videos, but in my video logs, I am supported on this channel primarily by donations from the Nerd Castle through Twitch and through Patreon. It helps out tremendously. I'll have a link down below if you wanted to check out some of the rewards. I hope that they're fun. Some of them range from, you know, giving you an extra hour of Twitch streaming every single day. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it'll go from 5 to 8. There's all kinds of cool rewards in there. Check them out later on when I get merchandise and stuff like that. If it ever happens, the people that contribute will get like free, you know, freebies and swag from, you know, the random merchandise and whatnot. I haven't gotten there yet, but there are rewards up. I retailored them all. Check them out. I will see you all later. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you all next time. Hi, do everybody.